Alright, so I'm here to explain how the GPS, egg hatching, and the buddy system work in Pokemon Go and things to avoid when trying to hatch your eggs. So, the GPS in your game is constantly tracking how you move and where you're moving to find Pokemon and Pokestops in the gyms, but that's not how the distance is calculated for eggs and your Pokemon buddy. So the distance is tracked by something they call a ping. And every 60 seconds the game reports to the server where you're at. I don't know why exactly they use this system instead of the standard just track everywhere you're going using the GPS, but I guess it's a bit easier. And there's also the deal that they don't have to have a constant speedometer working, and I'll explain how that is in a sec. So how the pings work for hatching is every 60 seconds a ping is taken of where you're at, and 60 seconds later another ping is taken. So if I had a first ping here and then I had a second ping over here, that's where I was 60 seconds later. So the advantage to this is that Pokemon Go doesn't actually have to track your speed or how you're moving at all. And so instead of tracking where you're going with a certain speed and seeing if it's too fast to hatch your egg, it tracks the distance, and if it's under a maximum distance set by the game, it's added towards hatching your egg. So I don't know the exact distance or anything, but I'm just going to make up a number for an example. So let's say the number is 400 feet. So I'm pinged over here, and then 60 seconds later, I walked over here, and I was pinged over here. So let's say this distance I walked was 150 feet. So because of this value is lower than 400, it's added to the egg hatching distance. But let's say I went from here and then drove clear over here. Oh, I don't know how I did that. New to this whole thing. And I drove clear over here. And let's say this distance so I start here, and then 60 seconds later I drove over here. Let's say this distance was 3,000 feet. And now because it's above the 400 feet, it's not counted towards hatching your egg. Now if you notice, the distance I calculated, I can't draw a straight line for sure, but the distance is calculated in a straight line. This is where a major flaw will come into this game, and that's why if I was actually running on a track like that, and I started over here, and let's say I was running a 400-meter run, and so I went around the track, and it took me about 60 seconds, and so I'd end up back around here. But because both these pings ended up in the same spot, no distance will be added to the egg because Pokemon doesn't track how you moved around the track over here. It just tracks the two pings right here next to each other, and it calculates the distance. Now, this issue also, it works when you're going around a building. So say I was going around some rectangular building. I started here, and then I walked all the way around and ended up here 60 seconds later. But because it just tracks the pings, instead of tracking where you went, it just draws a straight line. So I could have actually had to walk maybe 500 feet, but the distance from here to here could only be 150, and so that distance would be added to the egg instead of the 500. just ignore how that's over the 400 because I'm just making numbers up right now. But this is why a lot of walking distance is complained to be inaccurate, and also why there's a discrepancy about the maximum speed that you are allowed to travel, and that's why you can talk to anyone and you'll hear 12 miles an hour, 15 miles an hour. Some people will say 5 miles an hour. It's no one honestly could figure out the max speed, but that's because it's not a speed, it's a distance. And so it means even someone testing the distance or the max speed, one person could be walking from here to here. They think it's about like 5 miles an hour or whatever, and then another person can go all in crazy lines and end up here. I kind of messed up that explanation, but either way, two people can be walking totally different pathways and only end up right there, where one person can walk there to there. So to explain this, some person can be running here to here, and they can be sprinting, and they can say that went too far, but another person can go all this way and be walking really slow, but they still end up there because it just tracks the distance, not all these wayside marks, just straight to. So when you're walking an egg and you want the most efficient way to hatch it, all you want to do is walk in a straight line like that, and so you won't have to account for any of the backtracking or the straight lines. You'll get a lot more distance counted that way.